you should have the first slide.
It's there. Yeah,
Good.
fine.
So a picture of Mount Fujisan, with the pagoda in the on the side there. All right. So what's oh yes, there we go. The mouse wasn't working, so I'll have to use the keyboard. That's okay. I might just move that away. All right. So what I'm going to do is just have a quick look at the geography of Japan, including the prefectures. I'm going to talk a little bit about our trip. As some of you know, in October last year, my wife and I had a couple of weeks in Japan, which was excellent and something that we've been planning for a while. We'll have a quick look at the really interesting geological environment of Japan. I've got a list of resources there, which are all books that are useful in terms of the minerals, and then we'll look at the minerals themselves, some of the minerals, not all of them because there's a lot. Okay. Now, still in the way. Hang on. Okay, so Japan itself is made up predominantly of four main islands, Hokkaido at the top, Honshu here, and the other two down the bottom. But there are many thousands of islands in total. And it's split into 47 modern prefectures. They've changed over time. And the interesting thing is the second largest island, which is Hokkaido, is one prefecture, whereas the smaller ones down the bottom, if you can see my cursor, they're split into multiple ones. There are what's called sub-prefectures in Hokkaido as well, but oh, there's Mark. But it's still quite a big area just to have the one prefecture. And this is Okinawa, which is sort of down the bottom corner there somewhere. They just put it there like they do with Hawaii when you see a map of the US. All right, so in terms of the geology, that again, there are a number of tectonic plates that run through Japan or alongside Japan, and that's why we get to see quite a few earthquakes there. There's quite a lot of volcanoes and so on, and the intersection of those plates is quite interesting, and that they're actually thinking that there might be a megaquake at some time in the fairly near future, which is going to be catastrophic. Although the people in Japan tend to be ready for those sorts of things. I mean, they live with earthquakes on a regular basis. But if you're interested in that side of things, I'd suggest Googling the tectonic plates in Japan and having a look at the level of complexity. We think that New Zealand is quite complex, but it's nothing compared to Japan. It is a volcanic island arc, so you've got a number of active volcanoes. Fuji is one of those, even though that hasn't erupted for, I think the last time was in the 1700s, but it's still an active volcano. And I think there is one in the south of the country that is currently has been quite active in the last month or so. The biggest earthquake in recent times is the one that took out the nuclear power plant, and yeah, that killed a lot of people and was a very nasty 9 point something earthquake, which is massive. And even last year, I think just a bit over 12 months ago, you had the Noto earthquake up on the north coast of Japan, which also did a lot of damage and killed a few thousand people in the process as well. Because of all of the activity and the volcanic side of things and so on, it is a very mountainous country, and most of the population is in the lower lying areas, which again can be a risk with the activity. But because of that, it also then has created a range of different rock types. So you'll get ones that are obviously igneous from the volcanoes and so on, and quite a lot of metamorphic rocks, and the sedimentary rocks because of the accumulation from those mountains right the way along. And we'll see a couple of examples as we go through. In terms of the books, the resources, I've color coded this. You've got the green ones, which are actually written in English. You've got the red one, which is only in Japanese, in kana. So interesting to try and determine what some of the particular locality names are. Although these days, with using things like your phone and Google Lens or something like that, you can actually translate quite well. And then the ones that are in sort of the gold color are all bilingual. So they are in English and Japanese in part. But they're all very useful publications, even if some of them are a little bit dated now. There's actually more on Japan than I anticipated when I first started getting interested in it. Talking about that, we decided that we were going to go to Japan. Initially, we decided that quite a long time ago, and it was going to be one of our post-retirement trips, and then COVID hit and sort of put the mockers on that. So we got serious about it about 2 years ago, and at that time, I decided that it would be a good idea to try and learn some Japanese to try and use the language a bit when I actually went there. And I meet with two Japanese language partners on Skype, two different ones at different times during the week, and have been doing that for a while now and have continued to do it even after our trip. And my Japanese is still very, very basic, but I can ask and understand a few things, and that came in useful a couple of times while we were away. So 2 years ago, we decided, yes, it's time to do it. And then we looked at when would be the best time to go. And originally we were going to go in September, so not in Japan's summer, which I don't like humidity, and it tends to be quite warm and humid in Japan. And we didn't really want to go there when there was the potential for a couple of meters of snow, which is a worst case scenario. But so we ended up saying initially that we would go in September. And then before I'd actually booked the flights, I think the year before, even the September temperatures seemed to be quite high. And so we pushed it back into October, and that's what we ended up going with. It was still high 20s when we were there and still quite humid, but at least it was bearable. Our trip itself started with, well, we went with Scoot, which is Singapore Airlines sort of second tier airline. And we went on Pikachu, and Pikachu obviously has its basis in Japan, even though it's well known around the world. And everything was themed. It was quite an interesting flight. But we went on Economy Plus, so we had plenty of leg room, and it wasn't that big a trip for us from Australia either. We are very close in terms of time zones, but as at the moment, there's only 1 hour difference between Australia and Japan, Eastern Australia. And so jet lag wasn't going to be an issue. I think we had two flights of around 7 hours each, with Singapore in the middle. So it was quite a pleasant trip. Now, if we have a look at this is a close-up of the map of Japan. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, so we flew into Tokyo. We spent 5 nights into Tokyo, where we had a look at lots of different things. One of the days we actually did a day trip on a bus down to Mount Fuji, which is here, and returned. And then after Tokyo, we took the Shinkansen, the bullet train, all the way down through here to Kyoto, and we had 8 nights in Kyoto, and then another bullet train down to Osaka, and the last 2 nights in Osaka before we flew over to South Korea over here. And we had 5 nights in South Korea and met up with Jolly on Ralph. Just happened to be there at the same time, which was really interesting. Japan rail services in particular are absolutely fantastic. Generally, everything is on time within seconds. If they're outside of seconds, they get a bit upset. But interestingly, the trip from Kyoto to Osaka was an 11-minute trip on the bullet train. And we were waiting at Kyoto for the train to arrive, and the train was 13 minutes late coming in, which meant that it was later than the actual trip length, which was very unusual. Japan is a very, very clean place. The people are very respectful. It's not noisy. It's very quiet. It was a really pleasant trip. Anyway, we'll see a little bit of that as we go through. Was that not? There we go. Our first mineral that we saw, Japanese mineral, sort of, was ice crystal, so mineral ice. And this was as we were flying in to Tokyo. It was obviously quite cold that high up in the sky, and little ice crystals were forming on the porthole window. So it was quite cute. Couldn't collect them, of course, but they were interesting. And in Tokyo itself, there's just a few shops. So the one on the left is in Shinjuku, which is, there are cities within the greater Tokyo metropolis. And this was the city of Shinjuku, which we stayed at. We were in a hotel just up the road from there. The streets are quite narrow. Most of the streets are quite narrow and have lots of advertising everywhere around, big billboards down to small signs and so on. The bit in the middle was the salad that came with a meal. I caught up with the language partner that I have, Sho, who lives in Tokyo, and we went for lunch, and that was the salad. It's really quite nice. And on the right-hand side, that's an indication of what one of the tourist areas looks like. So it was near Ueno, which is to the north, basically, of the center of Tokyo, which we'll come on to a bit more. The photo on the left was taken very early in the morning. The streets didn't really get busy until 8:30, 8:45, something like that. But me being a morning person, I was out and about and just walking around looking at the place, and it was quite pleasant. You see there's a little truck thing down there as well. It's a little delivery truck. One of the things you'll notice in Japan is there's no rubbish lying around anywhere. South Korea wasn't as clean, but certainly Japan was very, very clean. And there were people, even early in the morning, people out sweeping the footpaths if there was anything, even leaves that had sort of dropped onto the footpath, they would clean up. Talking about Ueno, we went to the Science and Nature Museum in Ueno Park, and we travelled there by train, just the local one of the JR lines. There's a number of JR, Japan Rail, different companies. And so it was about a 15-minute or so rail trip. And inside the stations, the big stations in particular, they have like little shopping centres, and you get all sorts of different shops. You actually, to get into them, you'd have to have some sort of ticket, whether it be a platform ticket or a rail ticket. But inside the one at Ueno was this place called the Tokyo Science Company, and called the Study Room. The actual shop was called the Study Room, and it had minerals in it, which was quite a surprise. So they didn't have any Japanese minerals, but they did have a range of things. And just in terms of pricing, that sulfur on the left-hand side, 27,500 yen. That at the time, with the exchange rate as it was when we were there, would have been about $270 Australian, so probably about 155, $160 US. That gives you an indication of the sort of pricing of these minerals. And then because we had the Tokyo Science Co, I thought when I go back to the hotel, I'll have a bit of a look and see if I can find out a bit more about it, because maybe they do have some Japanese minerals, which I'm obviously interested in. And what I found was that in a place, a suburb called Kabuchiko, there was another Tokyo Science Company outlet, a small shop, actually smaller than the one at Ueno Park. But that was just down the road. It's right next to where we were actually staying. So it was about a 15, 20-minute walk for me. So I went and had a look at that as well, just to see. Now, once again, they didn't have any Japanese minerals. It was all overseas stuff, but it was still quite interesting. And fossils as well, rocks, minerals, fossils, and books. I did get a couple of books from there. I also think I got a Western Australian meteorite from this shop as well, which is just a small one, from a locality that I didn't have. So that was quite interesting. A lot of people there most of the time too. There's a lot of people in Japan that are interested in this sort of thing. Anyway, back to the Science and Nature Museum. We're going to see a lot more of that later. This was one display that did surprise me. When you think about ammonites, big ammonites, when I think about them, I think about England and a couple of other places in Europe. But I hadn't considered a place that was so full of mountains and volcanoes and so on to actually have quite large ammonites. And these are all Japanese ones. It was quite interesting. We'll come back to that later. Now, also in the Ueno area, there was the other thing that I'm interested in, art supplies. And there's this little shop here. I knew about this one before I went. I'd found it online. I think I'd initially seen a YouTube video of somebody that had gone in there and had a look at the place. And it's over 3 floors. And what they do is they crush their own material to make pigments. And if you squint hard, down in this area, there's a little cabinet, and there's an azurite and a malachite specimen sitting in that cabinet there. And that's some of the natural materials that they use to create their pigments. Now, the traditional Japanese painting is called Nihonga, and they use pigments that are mixed with some sort of binder. And so it's a bit like, probably more like gouache, because it's generally opaque. It's not like watercolors where you get a lot of transparent colors. But the really interesting thing is, if you look at this range of greens here, for instance, they're all different shades, but it's all the same pigment. And the reason for the difference in the color is actually the size of the grain, how much they crush it, which I found quite interesting. I did buy a little set of these, which I haven't yet used, but I need to mix them up myself to use them. I'm going to give it a try at some stage. I only went into the bottom floor. It's a bit like America, where what we would call the ground floor is the first floor. There were 2 other floors, and one's the framing area, and the other one is where they actually mix the pigments. Sorry, crush the pigments. And if I go back, I'm going to get a tour of that place as well. I didn't have enough time on this particular day. The other place that I really wanted to go to and ended up going is Kimbocho Booktown. It's another suburb of Tokyo, and it has somewhere in the region of about 200 bookshops in quite a small area, which is a lot of books. And most of them, not all, but most of them are Japanese. But um, I was meeting Sho for lunch that day, and he worked at the time in Jimbocho. So we met there. And while I was waiting, I went into just one of the bookshops and happened to be this one. And the reason I went in is I looked in the window, and you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner here. This is a zoom of that, and you've got Dure Metallica sitting there. So I thought, oh, they must have something in the way of geological or mineralogical books or whatever. So I went inside. I asked the young guy at the counter in Japanese um, if they had any books related to those sciences. And he pointed, he must have understood me because he pointed down one particular aisle and basically said down the bottom of the aisle. And I went to the end, and there was like three shelves of books on geology and other things. I ended up getting a couple of interesting ones. So that was good. I only went into one other bookshop after we'd finished lunch, and that was just along the road from this one, and managed to get some, I call them vintage rather than antique, but old Japanese paintbrushes. Really, really nice. So unfortunately, my wife stole them on me, even though she doesn't paint. But I'll have to go back and get some more. Also, not far is from that area is Asakusa. This is the one of the gates there. It's another very, very big tourist area. It was the same day that we went to Ueno and the pigment paint shop, and we were with Sho. He was sort of showing us around, and because it was so close, we thought we'll go here. And it was getting towards evening, and the the crowds were probably the biggest crowds we'd seen, apart from around the Shinjuku rail station, which is, I think it's the biggest station in Japan as well. But it was certainly well worth going. On our way back, we obviously at night time we passed by Hotel Gracery, which has an animated mm, um, what's his name? Got the name of the monster. Anyway, Japanese uh,
Godzilla?
Godzilla. That's it. I couldn't think of his name. Yeah, it's Godzilla, and it's animated, and every now and again it sort of fires up. And on the right-hand side is a view from a little restaurant that we went in to have our evening meal. We actually found it quite difficult to get somewhere because all of the places we walked past had long queues. We'd obviously picked the wrong time of night to get in, and it took us a while to find somewhere that was worth it. But this is a red light district in Tokyo. That's quite interesting watching the toing and froing. We while we were in Tokyo, excuse me, we went to the Imperial Palace. There's not much left there now except for the walls. The actual palace itself is gone, but it's like a number of these types of structures around the world, where ancient structures, where the big blocks of rock have been sort of put together, and you can hardly see light between them. Really quite interesting. On our day trip to Mount Fuji, we managed to see Fuji with no snow but no clouds. At that time of year, normally there would be some snow up around the summit, but it's been a bit warmer in recent years. This is a particular village that is traditional thatched roofs that has been, you find these dotted around, just individual ones dotted around in some of the countryside in the villages in Japan, but you don't normally get a whole load together. And these ones are not, they were rebuilt in the 1800s. Sorry, rebuilt in last century, but in the middle 1800s, they got the whole village got wiped out by a typhoon. So they've rebuilt them in the same style as they were originally. And there's lots of the sort of local crafts and things like that. Apparently, to see Mount Fuji, you've got to be there one of the 30% of days when it's not covered in cloud. So we were pretty lucky. There are a few different types of animals around. So there's bears, there's monkeys. We didn't see any of either of those. And there's some quite large spiders as well. Didn't actually walk through that web, but it wouldn't be hard to do it. Luckily, there was lots of other tourists, and somebody else probably would walk through it before you. Our Shinkansen trip, if you're traveling in Japan, for any distance at all, you've got to go on the Shinkansen, on the bullet train. They are fantastic. But go on in the, I think they call it the green car, which is, it costs you a little bit more, but it's really worthwhile. In Kyoto, as I said, we had 8 nights there. Kyoto is quite similar to Tokyo in terms of the narrow lanes and things like that, but the buildings aren't as tall. Everywhere you look, you'll see shrines or temples. The one on the right here, there was actually a queue to go in and make some sort of offering there. The tree in the background is a ginkgo, and it's over 200 years old. So ginkgos were everywhere here and in South Korea. We didn't have much in the way of wet weather, but this on the left was one day when there was a couple of showers came through. As I said before, you get lots of shrines, even like small ones outside of people's houses. This one was about the size of a door, maybe a little bit bigger, but you see a lot of those. This one was in one of the temples in Kyoto, and it's the pig, I think, has something to do with fertility, and that's why all of these little piglets are down here, and people actually leave them and write little messages on. We have lots of vending machines dotted around, drinks or food or whatever. Again, this was in one of the temples, and in one alley, I found this little tuk-tuk, which was a bit of a surprise. It's the sort of thing you'd normally expect to see in some of the other Southeast Asian countries, but not necessarily in Japan. Didn't actually see any others, just this one. But the best thing for me in Kyoto was the Matsumo Geological Museum, also called the Rock Museum colloquially. And down the bottom right-hand corner there, you can see Greg Vella. Greg, I knew through Facebook. He's an American that lives in Japan. He's been there for more than 35 years and lives near Kyoto. And we arranged to actually meet on the Saturday. The museum's only open Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays. So if you're going, you've got to make sure you time it right. I knew that with the research that I'd done, which was good. It's over 3 levels. This is the top level, the top floor, which is the museum itself. All of these drawers at the back and same down the other side and underneath the cabinets are all full of Japanese minerals. Some of the minerals in the display cases are not Japanese, but for the most part they are. And yeah, it was. I'm going to go back. I have to go back and spend more time. I only got to look in half a dozen maybe of the drawers, but we had a one-on-one sort of tour by one of the guys that works there, one of the mineralogists, and I'd like to see more. It's really, really good. Downstairs on the bottom floor, they have two sets of drawers of about, I don't know, 10 drawers or so, which have minerals in little trays like this. And these ones are actually for sale. And you can't see the names of the minerals for the most part here. Some of them are in English, some of them are not. But the prices are really quite inexpensive. So this is like $10 Australian. I did end up buying a few, but I was thinking more of my ability to transport them weight-wise. Otherwise, I probably would have got more. Again, would like to go back and have another good look through. And I'd have to translate some of the labels as well to see what I'm getting and what I'm not. This is one of the drawers up in the museum up on the top floor. These are all Hokkaido prefecture minerals. The labels are all fantastic, all handwritten. Um, I just can't say anything more than it was like being in heaven. It was absolutely fantastic. The middle floor, I should say, is where they have their library because they have members as well, and the members can use the library. And they also have analysis available. So they have an SEM, an XRD, XRF, Raman, you name it, they've got it in the middle floor. um, every day that we were in Kyoto, I would get up, my usual, get up early, and I would say, all right, today I'm just going to pick that direction. I'd just walk. Um, it's the best way to see places like this, and you're totally safe in Japan as well, even at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, or even at night time. There's no issues. And near where we were staying, we stayed in an apartment, was what's called the Takase River, which is actually a canal. And this was a canal that was put in the 1600s, I believe, and had walkways on both sides, which you could walk up and down. And this is the only place in Japan. I didn't see this at the time. I only saw it when I was showing somebody else a photo when we got back to Australia, that there is actually rubbish under the bridge here in the water, probably from tourists, because the Japanese people aren't likely to dump this sort of stuff. Um, but that's the only time we saw any rubbish anywhere in the whole of Japan where we were. We were also very close to the Kamo River, which runs parallel to the Takase. And again, this has walking available all the way down. Our apartment was sort of behind to the right from where I was taking the photo, and down here about 3.5 kilometers was the uh, one of the temples. That's a big tourist spot as well. We walked everywhere. Where we were staying was reasonably central, with facilities nearby, but anywhere you wanted to go, you could just walk and walk and walk, and it was easy to do. Got quite warm sometimes, of course, when you're walking and it's humid, but it was good. Lots of bird life around here too. Can't see any in this particular photo, but there was lots of water birds, tortoises, and all sorts of things. We went to the Imperial Palace grounds in Kyoto. Now, Kyoto used to be the capital of Japan, before it became Tokyo. So going back 150 plus years. And the Imperial Palace still exists. It's behind the walls. You can't actually go into the palace grounds, the internal part. Interestingly, they've got these really old trees that have very heavy old branches, and they put these things in place to hold them up, which is quite ingenious. There's quite a few trees that were like that. There's lots of temples, as I said before. So the Nishi Honganji temple is one of them. Very, very colourful, lots of gilt on everything, basically. Big bells, big brass bells. Walking along the street, and there's be a big brass bell about a metre and a bit tall sitting outside the front of a shop, and yeah, they were everywhere. The Fushimi Inari temple is the one where you walk down the side of the river. This is the one that has the 1,000 torii red gates. Really, really big tourist area. This is probably where we saw the most number of tourists. But again, fortunately, we picked the right time. We went fairly early. As we were leaving, which was getting closer to lunchtime, there were more and more and more people coming in, and we're sort of fighting our way through to get out. But even while we're there, you can see there that's quite a lot of tourists. And that's just one of the buildings in the temple area. You've got the foxes, which are one of the gods, Shinto gods, I think, that not Shinto, no, probably Buddha, but Buddhist god. Buddhist, not sure. Anyway, you see a lot of foxes in the temples. The other thing that we managed to get to was the Toji Temple Market. So the Toji Temple has a five roofed pagoda on it, which is really interesting, and Buddhist temple area at the back here. And once a month, and it's on the date, the 21st of each month, so it doesn't matter what day of the month that actually falls on, they have this market. And because we were there over that period, we made a point of actually going to it. And if you look on the right-hand side here, you can see little bonsai trees. Not that we could take them with us, but you could actually buy quite a decent bonsai for about $25. And if I looked at something like that in Australia, you'd be looking at 10 times that amount. Moving on to Osaka. Move that out of the way again. So Osaka Castle. This has been rebuilt a few times, but they've kept it in the same style as the original. And in the grounds, you see some of the metamorphic rocks from the area, and you can see that's been squished and bent and warped and whatever. So you can imagine the amount of tectonic and other activity that's happened through here. And this is in one of the main streets that where we were staying in Osaka, and I had to take a photo of it just because of the content of the window. So you've got deer antlers, and you've got things in bottles and that you wouldn't normally expect to see, that I would not normally expect to see. Like you wouldn't see this in Australia at all. Seahorses and all sorts of stuff. It was just a bit of a shock to actually see it. Now, we're finished with the tourist side of it, and we're going to go have a quick look at the Science and Nature Museum. So back in Tokyo, in Ueno Park, they have a couple of rooms that have minerals. This area is minerals not from Japan, so quite a number of mineral specimens available to view there. And this is a pano shot, so it's warped a bit, but this is the minerals from Japan display. And you can see there's quite a lot. There was more than just this one room, but I could have spent longer in here than I did, but I had to be aware of the fact that my boss was standing outside waiting for me, so very patiently. Anyway, just looking at the minerals, Japan has over 1,500 species in total, which includes 169 type locality minerals. There's also a number of minerals where the names are associated with Japan, but the type locality isn't in Japan. There's a few examples there. Interestingly, it's not the type locality for Japan law twinned quartz, which I didn't know until recently. And of course, you've got the more common, better known Japanese minerals, the big stibnites. The latest Min record, I think, has got an article on the famous stibnite locality. You got manganese minerals, rhodochrosites from the Oppo mine and things like that. Japan law twin quartz, obviously, and what's called sakura stones or cherry blossom. Sakura is Japanese for cherry blossom. And they're a cerisite, I think, which are quite an interesting looking thing. Okay, in terms of the type locality minerals, there's 169 in total. I've got 59 in my collection, so actually not too bad. Um, on display at the museum, there are more than 50 of the type locality species on display, which is also pretty good. But we've got a few riders with what you're going to see now. So the photos, they're taken behind glass, so sometimes you get reflections. The spotlighting in a darkened room, so spotlighting for each mineral specimen is not the best, and you do get some exposure issues. Had to shoot some on an angle. Some species are just tiny dots on a rock, and you'll see arrows on a couple of them. Many of them are just rocks. They're minerals, but they actually just look like a rock. My phone camera sometimes chose to shoot in using digital zoom instead of optical zoom. iPhones, for whatever reason, sometimes you can put it on like the 2 times um, magnification, and it will just do 2 times digital zoom instead of using the actual camera, which is quite frustrating. I also had a very patient wife, as I said. Now, for each of the photos, you'll see a photo, the formula, brief description, who or what it was named for, the type locality, and where it's found on a map of Japan. And I'm going, okay, timer. So you'll see a few of those now. So anilite is the first one. Now, that's the information I just said there. This is where it's found, where the type locality is. In some cases, these minerals have been found in other parts of Japan, of course, but the actual type locality is marked by the red star. And that's the close-up of the actual mineral. Betulite, betulite. You'll see some that have an asterisk alongside. That's just an indication of the ones that I've got in my collection. Fucalite from the Fuca mine. A lot of the type locality minerals that are there are from the Fuca mine. Haradaite. Now, in some instances, I've included photos of where it's named after people, where it's known, the actual person. So this is Junpei Harada, it was named after. And it's this green stuff in the middle here. Henmillite, which is one that quite a few mineral collectors would know, again from the Fuca mine, beautiful sort of purplish blue crystals, or blue violet, as it says here. And interestingly, it's named for father and son, Henmi. So Kitinosuke and Chiyoko Henmi, which I didn't know until I actually looked it up. Immordiite, why? One of the arrows. So it's that little dot right there. And that one's named for a father and son. Icunolite. Itoiga Waite. Itoiga Waite. Very hard to say that. Jimboite. You'll notice some of these, quite a few of these are borates as well, particularly from the Fuca mine, there's a lot of borates. Kamiokite, canoite, one of the manganese minerals. Coazulite, Gimuraite, Kinichilite, Kinostalite, not pronounced how you think it might be pronounced. In Japanese, the Japanese language is monosyllabic, monosyllabic, I think, where each syllable takes up the same amount of time. So ki, n, o, shi, ta, li, or li. And quite often with some of the longer characters, if you like, she, quite often it's shortened a bit. So it's shta, not shita. So just a bit of useless information if you happen to be learning Japanese. Kobeite, Kozoite. There's two Kozoites. That's rare earths, obviously. Kusachiite, Manjiroite, Matsumo millite, and this is named after the founder of the Matsutomi Geological Museum that we saw before, the Rock Museum in Kyoto. Matsubarite, Nagashima-lite, Nakoriite, Nambulite, not Nambu. That's one of the problems with if you're Australian or probably American as well, is you'll pronounce things the way you read them, which is not necessarily the way it should be pronounced. So it's Nambu, because BU is boo sound, Nambulite. In actual fact, interestingly, there's, in terms of Japanese, there's na, there's bu, li, but there is no M consonant, if you like. But quite a few words that are, if they're written in Roman English, um, there'd be an N written, and sometimes that N is pronounced more like an M sound. So that could be where that originated, but there is no M in Japanese. Natronambulite, Omilite, Okayamalite, Okhotskite. Now, this is actually not a Japanese name. It's actually more of a Russian name. But the type locality is near the Sea of Okhotsk, which is up in this area here. So for whatever reason, it was given that as the mineral name. Osarezawaite, Osimelite. It's quite well known to people who like to collect minerals from volcanic rocks. Oyelite. It's another character that is not in a lot of use in modern day Japanese, is the ye sound. So it's almost been dropped from the character set. Proto-antopholite, Sakuraiite, Sakuraiite. I think that's, yeah, Sakurai. So the ite isn't the Japanese bit, and that confuses me sometimes on some of these words. Shigaite, Sonolite, Stanoidite. That was a surprise when I was looking at this. I didn't realize that stanoidite was actually a Japanese type locality mineral. Strontia orthojoaquinite, Sugilite, and that's one that often gets pronounced Shugilite. It's Sugilite, named for Kenichi Sugi. Suzukiite, Takedaite, Tamaite, Tanyamalite. It's another one that's hard to say. Taenite, Tobelite, Tokyoite, Sugaruite, Sumoite, Uedaite, Wakabashilite, another hard one to say. Watanabeite, Yoshimuraite, Yugawaralite, and then we're finishing off with one that is actually a specimen of mine, not the museum specimen, but I thought I'd leave this one. It's Hokkaidoite, which is a fairly new mineral, and it forms as crystallites inside opal. So this is a piece of opal, and the yellow little sort of like sprites in there is the Hokkaidoite. This is under probably under long wave UV, I think. It fluoresces under long wave, medium wave, and short wave. I think this was a long wave photo, and it's named for the island prefecture of Hokkaido, with 2 type localities. But apparently, it's also, according to Greg, it's also been found in a few other localities now through Japan. It's just, I don't think that the information has yet been published about that. But it's a beautiful, beautiful mineral. I've seen one photo, a magazine photo, where it was a shot taken at night outside at one of the type localities of like a river where the opal was outcropping in the river. And it's just the colours across the whole body of water are just phenomenal. Must have been pretty good UV lights to light it up that much though. And that is that. So if there's any questions. Timed it to perfection as well.
Nicely done.
Seems like a very good trip.
Oh, it was fantastic. We definitely want to go back. So this year we can't. My sister and her husband are coming over from the UK. So we won't be going anywhere this year. And maybe next year, depending on world events, I'll say. Yeah,
many world events. Yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen, so we will wait and see. But if we do another trip, we will spend at least probably another week in Kyoto. Definitely have to go back to the Geological Museum. It's an unbelievable place. But I also would like to go to Hokkaido. So that would mean that we'd probably maybe look at flying into Osaka, go to Kyoto, maybe back up through Tokyo for a couple of nights, catch up with Show again, maybe catch up with my other language partner who lives northeast of Tokyo on the way up to Hokkaido, and then spend a week or 10 days up in Hokkaido.
Yeah, very nice.
It sounds good.
I don't think I've got much at all from Japan in the way of minerals. It's not one of the places I've ever picked anything up from.
I didn't until probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I had maybe 3 or 4 different species. But because you don't see minerals from Japan generally anywhere. But right now, if I just have a quick look, it's not quick, it's a bit slow. Open up that. And so as it stands at the moment, of the 1,500 odd species, I have 263 in my collection.
That's not bad.
It's really. I was quite lucky that I first of all I had a trade with what's his name, Andrew Hodgson, who lives in the UK. He's lived in Australia as well. He was selling a few of his minerals on eBay initially, and he had quite a lot of rarer Japanese minerals. I got a few off him. And then we did a trade. So I bought some, and then we did a trade. And then Hiromi, who lives in Tokyo, she and I did a trade, and that was excellent because I got some more what you'd normally consider common minerals that are even harder than the rarer ones from Japan to get. And then there was a Japanese professor who was in Australia who gave a whole heap of minerals to a friend of mine who is more of a fossil person. and I was able to acquire those as well. And that was like 5 flats of specimens. And all of a sudden it jumped up to, a couple of hundred species. So it's quite surprising.
I told a lie. I got 4 locations.
Oh man.
Four minerals, 4 locations.
All right.
That's me.
I have a question. I have a question, Steve.
Yes, Richard.
There's one called Wakabeshiite, I think it was bright yellow.
Yes.
Would that have been radioactive material from Japan?
I can't remember the formula, but probably.
Okay, I didn't.
I thought it was vanadium,
Is it vanadium?
the boiler.
I honestly can't remember.
Arsenic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Arsenic.
Oh, okay. Yes, it probably was the
It's,
arsenic.
it's related to opiment.
Yeah, I do have an autunite, so there is some uranium minerals in
Sure.
Japan as well.
Well,
I have-
Steve, we saw a lot of photos, and almost everything is rocky material.
Yes.
Are there any species that show crystals?
There are.
Real crystals?
Yes, there are.
Visible crystals?
Being
The hemolites are very pretty under the microscope.
yeah, they can be. So even with what I've got in my collection, there's a mixture. So
Okay.
some are very nicely crystalline, very attractive, and some are ugly dots on a rock or whatever. I'll try and do a follow-up one once I've got round to photographing more of my stuff.
Yeah, I would like to see the crystals. Yeah, sure.
For
be good.
instance, things like Veseliite, which is quite a rare bright blue mineral. The Black Pine Mine, I think, is probably one of the better known localities. It's also been found in China, and there's, I think, 2 localities in Japan. So I've got a couple of specimens of that. Some of the zeolites are pretty good. There's various copper minerals and so on. So yeah, there's
Sumalite, of course. Yeah. Well, sumalite will be crystallized.
yeah, the sumalite's very well crystallized. Yeah.
Sure, of course. Yeah. And you go wildlife also.
Yes.
You know, you go wildlife, you see a lot of those in Iceland. The zeolite, and they're very, quite attractive. From there, at least.
Yep.
Steve, over here in Canada, we don't see many Japanese minerals. I think I have 5 in the collection. One of them I particularly like is a native gold specimen from Japan.
Yep.
I picked it up at the Detroit Mineral Show about 30 years ago.
Yes, I've got I think 2 gold specimens. One's a alluvial gold, and the other one's actually with galena and sphalerite, I think. So it's like a 3 species piece. I didn't have a galena from there before this one. So, but yeah, there's quite a lot of gold. If you'd seen my post yesterday on Mineral Matters, I think that was the history of gold in Japan, which is an article from a little while ago. But yeah, it's quite extensive because of the volcanics, the igneous activity there. No other questions?
No.
No? Good. All right.
Great.
Thank you all for attending.
Very good.
I've got to go
Thanks.
with my wife.
Very
Excellent.
enlightening. I'll try to remember all the names.
Just have a look at the video again when it's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I learned it by heart. Okay.
All
Hey,
right.
Steve,
Okay.
See you
next
later.
time you go to Kyoto,
Thanks,
go to
Steve.
the beer trail.
Oh, okay, I will.
Nice. They have a good
Bye.
craft beer scene in Kyoto.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind.
Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.